Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today. I'm Jamie, that's Dave, that's Heath. We're looking at some preseason risers now that the preseason is over. We each have a list of 5 guys that we're going to tell you about. We're not going to get into all of them, but let you know some of the guys that have piqued our interest and certainly have improved from the time the preseason started until the preseason ended on yesterday. So Heath, Dave, I asked you guys for 5 players each. Heath, we'll start with yours. So the 5 guys you gave us were Giovanni Bernard, Tony Jones, Corey Davis, Jerry Jeudy, and Kylan Grayson. Let's start with Corey Davis.
Yeah, he's dominated.
I paused for a second because I just want to collect my thoughts on this one because you just said he went ahead of Juju Smith-Schuster and who else in the draft?
Cortland Sutton. Yes,
so
round 6.
Corey Davis is not just rising; he's on a rocket ship to the moon.
And that's the thing. I think when I've talked about Corey Davis a lot this preseason, it's been in the context of I don't want to draft Corey Davis as high as everyone else does. But that doesn't mean that I don't think he's been a riser. He's absolutely been a riser. He's shown a great connection with Zach Wilson. The time that Elijah Moore missed has really helped him out. He looks like, as of right now, the clear number 1 wide receiver on the Jets. Now, there's lots of questions about how important the clear number 1 wide receiver on the Jets is and how many targets that would be. And I still would bet in the second half of the season on Elijah Moore over Corey Davis. But I feel pretty comfortable with him as my number 3 start wide receiver at the start of the year, at least.
It's going to be interesting. Like you said, clear cut now, yes. But at the start of training camp, it was Elijah Moore making every highlight play we could possibly see.
Best player in camp. Best player in camp.
Best player in maybe a lot of people's camps.
Right.
And, he was the draft pick. Now, granted, Corey Davis was the free agent that they brought in, and we still haven't seen what they're exactly going to do with Denzel Mims because he's been working his way back from food poisoning. We thought they were going to move on from Jamison Crowder this offseason, but they kept him. He's still going to be in the mix. But, yes, Corey Davis has certainly risen up the rankings and risen up a lot of people's draft boards. For sure. A guy that we all like a lot is Jerry Jeudy. And I know, Dave, you have him, I think, close
He's a top 50 player for
top
me,
50 player
overall.
for you. He's not quite there for me. Top 60 for me, excuse me. I don't know where you have him, Heath, but he's been a riser clearly based on what the training camp performance reports have been, and maybe now the decision to start Teddy Bridgewater has helped Jerry Jeudy a lot.
And I think it comes back to a lot of things, and plenty of people have said it this offseason, that the thing that killed him last year, inaccurate passes and drops. Well, drops generally are not that predictive, and the inaccurate passes we expect to be better because Teddy Bridgewater is going to be the quarterback. He's also just shown us over and over and over in training camp that he is one of the best route runners in the NFL, and I would only expect him to improve in year 2. I think his floor has been helped by Bridgewater. The fact that Sutton missed so much camp was limited in so much camp, I think gives him a little edge to be the number 1 wide receiver. I still think there's a risk that Cortland Sutton could come back and these guys could maybe kind of keep each other from being a number 2 wide receiver. But I love Jeudy's upside. I think he's got top 12 upside in Dynasty.
Yeah, you don't fear Sutton, and I know Noah Fant's a big target for you on draft day, Heath,
right.
But you don't fear these other guys maybe lowering the value for Jerry Jeudy because all of the things he was doing was with Sutton still working his way back. And then now Fant suffered this leg injury. So when everybody's there, can Jerry Jeudy really stand above the rest?
I think it's bad news for Fant. I think Sutton looked really good in the 3rd preseason game. The touchdown was a nice play on a scramble drill, and then he also had a really nice in-and-out route where he caught a deep ball. I like him, but I think Judy's the playmaker in this offense, and I think that'll be borne out through targets. I think those are going to be the 2 guys that you're going to want to have in this Broncos passing game.
Now you have Giovanni Bernard, Heath, and Tony Jones as risers. Which do you prefer to target? And I know format matters here,
right.
But does Tony Jones, are you going to still hedge your bets a little bit? Because it could be till tomorrow we find out what
right.
happens with the Saints running back situation.
Yeah, it's different discussion for me. I think Giovanni Bernard in a PPR league, you could draft and think about possibly starting him in week 1. He is, but he's a PPR only back. Tony Jones, we don't know much at all other than the fact that it seems like he's got at least a slight edge and maybe a big edge on Latavius Murray for the number 2 role. And that number 2 role is a role kind of like what Jamal Williams is in, kind of like what A.J. Dillon might be in, that he could be flex-worthy even when Alvin Kamara is healthy. And we saw it with Murray last year, the 2 weeks that Kamara missed. He was just an absolute must-start running back. So I draft Tony Jones with my last draft pick at this point. Now, Latavius Murray gets cut tomorrow. We're going to have to bump that up.
Yep, he could be a mid-round pick. Could be in that Jamal Williams range, that A.J. Dillon range. These guys, like you said, they're going to play but also have lottery ticket appeal should something happen to the starter in front of him. So, again, the guys that are risers for you, Giovanni Bernard, Tony Jones, Corey Davis, Jerry Jeudy. Quick word on Kylan Grayson. Why he's a riser?
There's reports that he may be their pass-catching tight end, and Jack Doyle doesn't have anything left. Mo Alley Cox being used more of a blocker. I think Granson could have a role. This Colts offense has always had plenty of room for tight end targets, and now they lost T.Y. Hilton.
And Carson Wentz has definitely leaned on his tight ends in Philadelphia with Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. So could be something of interest there for Grayson if you're looking for a late-round flyer tight end. He's obviously being drafted in Dynasty rookie-only drafts, but
right.
in seasonal redraft leagues, if you're stuck at the tight end position and there is nobody else there, he's not a bad dart throw late in your draft. Dave, your risers, we'll just piggyback off of the Tony Jones conversation. Start with Marcus Callaway, but the 5 guys for you: Marcus Callaway, Jakobi Meyers at the wide receiver position, Damian Harris and Sony Michel, one share to backfield, but no longer, and then Logan Thomas. But let's start with the 2 receivers there, Marcus Callaway and Jacoby Jones. Why do you like those 2 guys?
They've looked outstanding this preseason, and especially in the case of Callaway, we're talking about a wide receiver who's worked as basically the number 1 guy in a New Orleans offense that's not going to have Michael Thomas for the first month and a half, 2 months of the season. We don't know. And even when Thomas comes back, I think Callaway's going to have a role. The quarterback situation settling on Jameis Winston in New Orleans, I think that's better for Callaway than it would have been if Taysom Hill was the quarterback there. He's got size, he's fast, he separates. He's going to be somebody who makes plays for you, and you can draft him a lot later on draft day, maybe as like a number 3 or a number 4 type of receiver. And he's got a chance for the beginning of the year, as long as Thomas is out, to play like maybe a borderline number 2, number 3 wide out. You can use him as a flex safely, but I think he's got a lot of potential this year. And Jakobi Meyers separating like crazy on the field, going to basically take over the Julian Edelman role in New England. We talked earlier in the show about how Cam Newton might be the starter in New England, but it won't last very long. So I'm ranking him as if Mac Jones is going to be the quarterback there for a long time. And if that's going to be the case, I think you're going to see Jakobi Meyers continue to pick up targets. He had a 20% target share from Cam Newton last year, should be at least that high this year. And he's somebody in PPR leagues who's almost like a can't miss. I'm really excited about him.
Which receiver do you prefer?
It's Jakobi Meyers because I think he can do it for the full season. I worry about the Callaway once we get into real games, even when Michael Thomas isn't there, because he's going to actually have a good number 1 corner opposite him, it sounds like. So I like Callaway as a deep sleeper, but his price is probably going to get a little too expensive for me.
And then, Dave, the running backs, you talked about this earlier, that you like Damian Harris with Mac Jones, but I would imagine you probably still like him enough with Cam Newton under center as well.
I like him enough, but I'm really hoping that Cam Newton gets out of the way and lets Damian Harris become not only the lead back where you can get 15 carries a game, but also the short yardage goal line guy, because Cam's going to take a lot of that work away as long as Cam Newton is under center in New England. But we saw it last year. There were 4 games where Damian Harris had at least 15 carries. He gave you at least 9 non-PPR fantasy points in each game. That's a nice, safe floor in non-PPR. And I don't think he's going to catch the ball a lot this year, but we know he could do it. Maybe he gets 20 receptions over the balance of the season. It's not a lot, so his value is a little bit diminished in PPR, but I like him quite a bit. I think he's a really talented player. That offensive line's great. The schedule is good for him as well. So I think Damian Harris is someone that fantasy managers, if you want to take him as soon as round 5 in a non-PPR, I don't have a problem with it.
And Sony Michel on the rise, clearly with the trade to the Rams. Just give me a round. When are you looking to take Sony Michel?
I'm okay with him in round 9. Maybe like the last pick in round 8, but round 9 is really where you want to target Sony Michel.
What about you, Heath? When are you looking for the second running back in the Rams going into the season, but maybe the starter at some point during the year behind Darrell Henderson?
I'm more of a round 10, round 11 for Sony Michel. I just don't know if what it takes for him to get that role. It might be a Darrell Henderson injury, and I don't know how long Sony Michel can hold up under that role once he gets it.
Yep, he does have that arthritic knee that a lot of people are talking about, so we'll see if Michel can stay healthy. But he's had a very strong preseason and training camp for the Patriots, and clearly the Rams have bought in, looking to get some help to Darrell Henderson. Logan Thomas has been one of the biggest risers based on the ADP. He's now up to a top 10 tight end, where he started the offseason as outside the top 10. We know there are 6 guys that are going to get drafted at the position. He's 7th for me. Is he 7th for you too?
He's been 7th for me for a couple of weeks now. I really think, especially in PPR, that he's going to be a big-time target in Washington. Ryan Fitzpatrick hasn't had a tight end like this over the course of his career. Now he's got one. I think he's going to be very good.
I mean, Mike Gesicki's on
I think
par.
Thomas is better than Gesicki.
He might be, but I mean, pedigree would tell you that Gesicki is better, and you probably had a stop or two. I mean, he did play with O.J. Howard when he was still a young and upcoming tight end. So Thomas may be the most established guy, but Gesicki I think is right there with him. What he did last year, which was good, so that's encouraging if you're looking at Logan Thomas. All right, for me, my risers are Jameis Winston, Ben Roethlisberger, Chase Edmonds, Mike Gesicki, and Laviska Shenault. So tying in the tight end conversation there. For the quarterbacks, I think it's pretty obvious. Jameis Winston getting the job. He's a riser as a result of that. Ben Roethlisberger looking good, getting healthy. He's a riser as well. So easy to buy into those 2 quarterbacks as backup options, not somebody you should be drafting as a number 1 quarterback this year. But if you are looking to pair your guy, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford, the guys that you're drafting as later round starting options. You could pair them with Winston, pair them with Roethlisberger. If you don't want to do it with the Trey Lances or the Justin Fields of the world, these are 2 veterans that hopefully will establish themselves as potential starting options. Roethlisberger a little bit safer than Jameis, but Jameis maybe has a higher ceiling. The concern with Jameis would be Taysom Hill. Chase Edmonds is a guy that has certainly proven to be the potential front runner for the Cardinals starting running back job. We'll see how that goes once we get into game action and James Conner maybe gets a little bit more of a foothold as the second guy there. But Edmonds is somebody that in PPR, I think you can start to consider in round 5. I don't want to take him in round 5. I don't think anybody wants to take him in round 5. But in round 6, I think is a very safe spot for him, knowing what his upside could be. A 50-catch guy last year, and if he takes on more work in the rushing game, could be even better. So Heath, when are you considering Chase Edmonds coming off the board in PPR? We know it's different in non-PPR.
Yeah, it's middle of round 5 for me, and I would take him over Darrell Henderson in that format. I would take him over Gus Edwards in that format. I got those 3 backs kind of 55 through 57, and so I think that's where you start to look for him. Now, there might be somebody else. There's going to be plenty of drafts, I think, where he falls into round 6 still, but you shouldn't feel bad if you start off with 3 wide receivers and a tight end and need that number 1 running back in round 5. Take Edmonds and make him that.
And hopefully, again, he holds off James Conner for the goal line work, because that's where he lost out a lot last year. Kenyon Drake scoring double-digit touchdowns, and we hope that Conner does not necessarily fill that role entirely. It'd be nice if he fills that role a little bit for those people who have drafted him, but you like to see Chase Edmonds in that, getting those opportunities. I want to tie in Laviska Shenault to some of the receivers we spoke about already. So, Heath, you had Corey Davis. I'm not going to say Jerry Jeudy, because Jeudy, I think, is definitely going to go ahead of Laviska Shenault. But Corey Davis, Marcus Callaway, Jakobi Meyers, and Laviska Shenault. Dave, rank those receivers for me. Corey Davis, Callaway, Myers, and Shenault.
Myers is my favorite of the bunch. He is literally 1 spot ahead of Laviska Shenault. They're basically the same guy. The difference is that Laviska is sharing a little bit more. He's got Marvin Jones and DJ Chark in that offense. We know that Jacoby will eventually have Jonnu Smith. I don't know if Nelson Aguilar is on par with DJ Chark. And we also know the Patriots don't necessarily throw the ball as much as we think Jacksonville is going to throw the ball. So the argument for Shenault over Jacoby Myers is pretty obvious. I would have Callaway next and then Corey Davis last.
I do think that Chenault's more talented than Jacoby Myers, and he has a better chance to do more things after the catch than Jacoby Myers does. Shenault will be my favorite, then Corey Davis, then Jacoby Myers, then a gap, and then Callaway.
Yeah, for me, it's Shenault by a decent gap, and then Myers, then Callaway, and then Davis. But again, you could sort of put the latter guys for me in a hat and take them out. I like all of them. So, but Laviska Shenault, with the injury to Travis Etienne, is certainly a guy that's going to benefit in a big way. He just has to stay healthy. And then just in terms of injuries, Mike Gesicki is a riser because Will Fuller and Devontae Parker are not on the field. And I think if those guys are not on the field, like we saw last year, Gesicki really benefited when Preston Williams was gone. Tua Tagovailoa could lean on him. So Gesicki is a top 10 tight end for me going into the season, as long as Fuller missing 1 game, potentially going to miss more, and Devontae Parker, who knows exactly when he'll be healthy.